It started as a typical day at Buckingham Palace. Tourists gathered near the gates, snapping photos and marvelling at the royal guards and their majestic horses. But then, one man decided to take things too far. Ignoring tradition and respect, he approached one of the guards' horses with reckless intent. What he tried to do left the crowd stunned, but the guard's reaction is something no one saw coming. This wasn't just about discipline, it was a lesson in respect that quickly became a viral sensation. The morning had started peacefully enough. A gentle breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass across the palace grounds as the first rays of sunlight caught the gleam of polished brass buttons and the rich crimson of ceremonial tunics. The famous gates of Buckingham Palace stood proud against the brightening sky, their golden tips catching the light like crown jewels. Already, despite the early hour, tourists were gathering. They came in waves, families with excited children, couples hand in hand, tour groups following raised umbrellas, and solo travellers with cameras at the ready. Their whispered conversations and quiet footsteps created a respectful hum that seemed to honour the majesty of the place. Standing tall amid this growing crowd was Marcus Wilson, a royal guard mounted upon his trusted companion, Thunder. At 32, Marcus was the picture of military precision. His scarlet tunic fit perfectly across broad shoulders earned through years of service, while his bearskin hat added to his commanding presence. His expression remained impassive, but his eyes missed nothing as they scanned the grounds with practiced ease. Thunder was every bit his match in dignity. The 8-year-old black stallion stood perfectly still, his coat gleaming like polished onyx in the morning light. His muscles rippled with contained power, yet he remained as steady as a statue. Each breath was measured, each ear flicked deliberate. Together they created an image of perfect harmony between man and horse, a living symbol of the discipline and tradition they represented. This wasn't just any posting for Marcus. After serving in the household cavalry for 10 years, including 2 tours abroad, being selected as a mounted guard at Buckingham Palace was an honour he held dear. Every morning as he prepared Thunder for duty, he would speak softly to the horse, their ritual as much about mutual trust as it was about presentation. "Ready for another day, old friend?" he had whispered earlier, running a brush along Thunder's flank. The horse had nickered softly in response, a private moment of connection before they assumed their public faces of unwavering discipline. Now, as the crowd grew larger and the morning sun climbed higher, Marcus and Thunder held their post with the kind of stillness that came from years of practice. They had faced everything from screaming children to drunk tourists. Yet nothing had broken their composure. Their partnership was built on absolute trust, each knowing the other would remain steady no matter what challenges the day might bring. Little did they know, this particular morning would put that trust to the test in ways they hadn't expected. As the square filled with more tourists, neither Marcus nor Thunder reacted to the growing noise and movement. They were the perfect picture of royal dignity, a living reminder of traditions that had endured for centuries. But even centuries of tradition can be challenged by a moment of reckless disrespect. And that moment was about to arrive. The morning crowd at Buckingham Palace had settled into a pleasant rhythm. Japanese tourists bowed respectfully before taking photos, their movements careful and considered. American families pointed out the architectural details to wide-eyed children, while elderly British couples stood back, smiling at the familiar grandeur of it all. A group of French students sketched the scene in small notebooks, their art teacher explaining the historical significance of every detail. "Look, Daddy!" a young girl in a red dress whispered, tugging at her father's sleeve. "The horse is like a statue!" Her father lifted her onto his shoulders, explaining softly, "That's because they're very special, sweetheart. The guard and his horse trained for years to stand this still." Near the front of the crowd, An elderly veteran in a crisp blazer adorned with service medals stood watching Marcus and Thunder with knowing eyes. He nodded approvingly at their perfect posture, occasionally sharing quiet comments with those around him about the discipline required for mounted guard duty. "See how the horse doesn't even twitch an ear?" he explained to a curious teenager. "That's years of training, that is. Not just any horse can do this job. They're selected from the finest bloodlines, trained since birth." The peaceful atmosphere was shattered by a loud laugh that cut through the respectful murmur of the crowd. "Oh man, this is going to be epic." The voice belonged to Derek Thompson, a 26-year-old self-proclaimed social media prankster from Manchester. His swagger cut through the crowd like a knife, his designer tracksuit clashing garishly with the formal atmosphere of the palace grounds. "Make way! Make way!" Derek called out, his friends trailing behind him with phones already recording. "Time to make some real content." He was flanked by two equally boisterous companions, Jake with his backward baseball cap and oversized sunglasses, and Mike sporting a shirt that read "Like and subscribe" in neon letters. The crowd began to part instinctively, creating a bubble of space around Derek and his friends. Parents pulled their children closer, the French students stopped sketching, and the elderly veteran's expression hardened into disapproval. "Watch this," Derek announced to his friends, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "These guards think they're so special with their fancy horses and big hats. Let's see how special they really are." He held his phone up high, speaking directly into the camera. "What's up, followers? Your boy Derek here, about to show you something crazy at Buckingham Palace." Jake snickered, adjusting his phone's angle. "This is gonna get so many views, bro." Mike chimed in. "Remember that video with the guard at Tower Bridge? This one's gonna be even better." The atmosphere had shifted completely. What had been a scene of respectful tourism now crackled with tension. The veteran took a step forward, his medals catching the sunlight, but held himself back, for now. A mother hurriedly whispered to her children in German, moving them away from the unfolding scene. Derek's voice grew louder as he approached the line, marking the acceptable distance from the mounted guard. "Hey, big man," he called out to Marcus. "Is that horse real? Or is it just a really good robot?" He turned to his audience, both physical and digital. "Let's find out, shall we?" Marcus and Thunder remained perfectly still, but there was a new tension in Thunder's muscles, a subtle shift that only an experienced horseman would notice. The morning sun caught the edge of Marcus's sword, a reminder of the authority he carried. As Derek continued his approach, each step bringing him closer to a line that wasn't meant to be crossed. The peaceful morning had transformed into something else entirely, a mounting confrontation between centuries of tradition and modern disrespect, with Marcus and Thunder standing as silent sentinels at the center of the gathering storm. "Come on, mate! Give us a smile!" Derek's voice rang out across the square as he edged closer to Marcus and Thunder. "You're on camera! This could be your big break!" He played to his audience, gesturing dramatically while Jake and Mike circled with their phones, capturing every angle. The crowd's reaction was immediate but divided. Some tourists backed away, sensing trouble, while others raised their phones, eager to capture whatever was about to unfold. The veteran in his medal-adorned blazer stepped forward, his face darkening. "Show some respect, young man," he called out, but Derek barely spared him a glance. "Respect?" Derek scoffed, turning to face his camera again. "Watch this, followers. I'm about to make a royal guard famous." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a handful of coins. The metal caught the sunlight as he held them up for his audience to see. "Sir," a palace security officer called from the edge of the crowd, "step back behind the line." But Derek was already committed to his performance. "Let's see if Mr. Serious up there wants to earn his keep." With an exaggerated flourish, he tossed the coins, letting them scatter across the cobblestones near Thunder's hooves. The clinking sound echoed in the suddenly quiet square. Thunder's ears twitched almost imperceptibly, but the horse remained steady. Marcus's grip on the reins tightened slightly, a minute adjustment that only the most observant would notice. Years of training held firm as both guard and mount maintained their composure. "Nothing! Not even for money!" Derek's voice took on a mocking edge. "Maybe the horse is hungrier than you are." He pulled an apple from his jacket pocket, waving it tauntingly. The crowd gasped as he took another step forward, crossing the white line painted on the ground. A young boy clutched his mother's hand tightly. "Mummy, he's being mean to the horse," he whispered, loud enough for those nearby to hear. The mother pulled him back, but her eyes never left the scene unfolding before them. Jake, still filming, edged closer to Derek. "This is gold, mate. The views are already rolling in." Mike chimed in from the other side. "Do something bigger. Make him move." Derek's confidence grew with his friend's encouragement. He took another step closer, now well beyond the permitted distance. "Maybe this horse needs a little exercise," he announced to his live audience. "Seems a bit stiff, doesn't he?" The veteran couldn't contain himself any longer. "That's enough," he barked, his military bearing evident in his stance. "You're disrespecting more than just a man and his horse. You're disrespecting the crown." Derek spun around, playing to the growing tension. "The crown? It's the 21st century, Grandad. This is just entertainment." He turned back to Thunder, moving close enough that his breath could almost reach the horse's flank. "And I'm about to make it more entertaining." Thunder's muscles tensed beneath his gleaming coat, a ripple of movement that spoke of contained power. Marcus remained motionless, but his eyes had shifted slightly, tracking Derek's every move with military precision. The morning air grew thick with tension as Derek raised his hand, his intentions becoming clearer with each passing second. "Watch this, everyone," Derek announced, his voice carrying across the now silent square. "Let's see how well trained this horse really is." He reached toward Thunder's rear flank, his fingers spread wide in an obvious gesture of provocation. The crowd held its collective breath. Phones were raised higher, cameras focused intently on the scene. The veteran took another step forward, his cane tapping against the cobblestones. Even Jake and Mike had fallen silent, their bravado replaced by nervous anticipation. In that moment, the only sound was the gentle flutter of flags above the palace and the steady breathing of Thunder, whose disciplined calm was about to be put to the ultimate test. Derek circled closer to Thunder's rear flank, his movements becoming more theatrical with each step. "Come on, big guy," he taunted, waving his hands near the horse's hindquarters. "Let's see what happens if I, He lunged forward suddenly, fingers outstretched toward Thunder's leg. Thunder's ears pinned back slightly, the first real sign of awareness he'd shown. The massive horse's muscles rippled beneath his gleaming coat, but years of training held firm. Marcus's knuckles whitened almost imperceptibly on the reins, the only indication that he was acutely aware of the escalating danger. "Don't!" The veteran's voice cracked through the air like a whip. "That horse could kill you with one kick." But Derek was too far gone in his performance to heed the warning. "Nah, he's just a big puppet," Derek laughed, playing to his live audience. "Watch this! I bet I can make him dance!" He dropped into an exaggerated crouch, preparing for something more dramatic. The crowd gasped as they realized his intent. A mother clutched her children close, hurriedly backing away. "Someone stop him!" she called out. Others joined in with shouts of warning and dismay, but Derek's friends continued filming eagerly. "This is going viral," Jake called out, zooming in on Derek's increasingly dangerous position. Mike added, "Do it, mate. Show them what you're made of." Thunder's nostrils flared slightly, breathing in the scent of threat and disrespect. The horse's right front hoof lifted barely a centimetre off the ground before settling back. a subtle sign of mounting tension that any experienced horseman would recognise as a warning. Marcus remained statue still, but his eyes had locked onto Derek's position with laser focus. The morning sun glinted off his sword and polished buttons, highlighting the absolute control in his posture. Every muscle in his body was coiled, ready, though his expression never changed. "Time for the main event, followers!" Derek announced to his phone. "Let's see if we can make this horse take a little tumble." He reached out toward Thunder's front legs, his intention clear. He was actually going to try to push or trip the massive ceremonial horse. The crowd's reaction was immediate and horrified. Phones raised higher, recording what everyone feared would be a disaster. The veteran started forward, his medals clinking, but he knew he'd never make it in time. "This is nuts, even for you," Jake muttered, but he kept filming. Mike had fallen silent, finally sensing they'd crossed a line too far. Derek's hands were inches from Thunder's front legs now. The horse's muscles bunched and tensed, centuries of breeding and training warring with natural instinct. Marcus's jaw clenched, the first crack in his immaculate composure, as he prepared for what might come next. The air itself seemed to thicken with tension. Parents covered their children's eyes. Someone in the crowd started to scream. The veteran raised his cane in warning. But Derek, lost in his own performance, reached for Thunder's leg with reckless determination. "Time to go down, big boy," he declared, fingers stretching toward the horse's knee. In that moment, the only sound was the collective intake of breath from the horrified crowd as guard and horse prepared to show exactly why some lines should never be crossed. Thunder's ear swiveled back sharply, the last warning that Derek would ignore at his own peril. The morning sun caught the edge of Marcus's sword as his grip shifted ever so slightly on the reins, ready for what would come next. The moment of reckoning had arrived. Derek's fingers had barely grazed Thunder's leg when everything changed. Marcus's command cut through the air like a thunderbolt. "Stand fast!" The words, spoken with parade ground authority, froze Derek in his tracks. But it wasn't the command that made the crowd gasp. It was what happened next. Thunder, responding to unseen signals from his rider, executed a perfect quarter turn. The movement, practiced countless times in training, was as smooth as flowing water, but as powerful as an avalanche. The massive warhorse pivoted on his rear legs, his shoulder shifting with deliberate precision. Derek, caught completely off guard, stumbled backward. His phone clattered to the cobblestones as Thunder's sheer mass commanded the space where he had been standing seconds before. The horse hadn't touched him. He hadn't needed to. The controlled display of power was enough. "Step back from the horse." Marcus's voice carried the weight of centuries of authority. He hadn't shouted. He didn't need to. Every word landed like a hammer blow as he continued, "You are in violation of the King's Guard perimeter." Derek's face, previously flushed with bravado, drained of colour. He looked up and up at Marcus, suddenly aware of just how small he was compared to the mounted guard. Thunder stood perfectly still again, but now his position left no doubt about who controlled this situation. I was just... Derek's voice cracked as his performance crumbled. The crowd had fallen absolutely silent, phones still recording every moment of his humiliation. "On your honour, stand down!" The veteran's voice rang out from the crowd, heavy with military bearing. "You've dishonoured yourself enough for one day." Jake and Mike had stopped filming, their phones lowering as they backed away from their friend. The once cocky social media prankster stood alone, his planned performance transformed into a very different kind of viral moment. Thunder's ears flicked forward again, his bearing regal and composed. A subtle shift of Marcus's weight in the saddle was all it took for the horse to take one step forward. A step that sent Derek scrambling backward, nearly tripping over his own feet. "Palace security has been notified," Marcus stated, his voice level but carrying an edge that could have cut steel. "You will be escorted from the grounds." As if on cue, two security officers emerged from the crowd, their expressions stern. The gathered tourists erupted in applause. Not the mocking kind that Derek had hoped to incite, but the genuine appreciation of people who had just witnessed dignity triumph over disrespect. Even some of those still filming had lowered their phones to join in the clapping. "That's how it's done," the veteran announced proudly, addressing the crowd. "Man and horse, working as one. That's what tradition means." Derek, his face now scarlet with shame, didn't resist as the security officers moved to escort him away. His friends had already disappeared into the crowd, leaving him to face the consequences alone. His abandoned phone lay on the cobblestones, still recording, capturing his retreat from an angle that would soon become popular on social media, but not for the reasons he'd planned. Thunder and Marcus resumed their post with perfect precision, their composure unbroken. The morning sun caught their outline, guard and horse standing proud against the palace backdrop, creating an image of timeless dignity that no amount of modern disrespect could tarnish. The whole incident had lasted less than a minute, but its impact would be remembered by everyone who witnessed it. Not as the viral prank Derek had planned, but as a powerful reminder that some traditions endure because they deserve to endure, protected by those who understand their true value. "Clear the area, please," the security officers commanded as they led Derek away. His swagger was gone, replaced by the shuffling steps of someone who finally understood the weight of his mistakes. Behind him, scattered coins still lay on the cobblestones, silent witnesses to his failed attempt at fame. The crowd parted, their phones now capturing his walk of shame. "Not so funny now, is it?" someone called out. A child's voice piped up clearly through the murmurs. "Mummy, the guard and his horse won!" The simple observation drew appreciative chuckles from those nearby. The veteran approached the scattered coins, leaning heavily on his cane. With dignity, he picked them up one by one. "These belong to the crown now," he declared, placing them in a security officer's hand. "Let them serve as a reminder of what respect means." Marcus and Thunder maintained their post, their bearing somehow even more regal after the confrontation. The morning sun highlighted them in profile, guard and mount, perfectly matched in their dedication to duty. No trace of the incident showed in their demeanour. They were once again the living statues that had first drawn the crowd's attention. As the square settled back into its normal rhythm, phones buzzed with notifications. The incident was already spreading across social media, but not with the hashtags Derek had planned. Royal Guard's perfect response and dignity wins were trending, accompanied by clips of Thunder's masterful pivot and Derek's humbling retreat. Parents who had shielded their children's eyes now pointed proudly at Marcus and Thunder, teaching a different lesson than the one Derek had intended. "That's what real strength looks like," one father explained. "Not showing off, but standing firm." The veteran straightened his blazer, medals gleaming. "Well done, son," he said quietly, offering a crisp salute to Marcus before turning away. The gesture spoke volumes, one serviceman acknowledging another's perfect execution of duty. The morning sun continued its climb over Buckingham Palace as tourists resumed their photos and admiration, now from a more respectful distance. Marcus and Thunder stood unchanged, guardians of a tradition that had proved its worth once again. Some things, their bearing seemed to say, are worth preserving exactly as they are. If you enjoyed this Royal Guard story of dignity triumphing over disrespect, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon. You won't want to miss our next incredible tale of tradition, honour, and justice served at Buckingham Palace. Share with friends who appreciate real heroes, and join our growing community of Royal Guard story enthusiasts. New stories every day.